I'm Lavinia Butler, and welcome to Luvric and Company. We'll have a wonderful show for you today, and my guest is the new, well, she's not all that new, but we'll talk about it, the Metro Nashville Juvenile Court Judge, Judge Sofia Brown Crawford. We're glad to have you with us, Judge Crawford.
Thank you, Lavinia, very much for asking me to participate today. I'm glad to be here.
Good. And we're going to talk about the juvenile court system and here in Nashville, Tennessee. It's so much been going on in the news about children and about, especially with the state and DCS and the problems with children in custody dying and just so many problems with children in our system. And people think the juvenile court is just all bad kids and all of these myths and things. So we want to get down to the truth today.
Thank you, Lavinia. Can I just start by educating some folks that don't deal with us about juvenile court?
Yeah, just tell us what does juvenile court do? What all do you do?
I'll certainly let you know that. Oftentimes, as you said, a lot of folks tend to associate juvenile court with just delinquency and kids that get in trouble. But the truth be known, there's a whole lot more to us than just delinquency. Juvenile court, we address parentage cases. We, last year, I think, had about 6,000 kids that came before us.
When you're saying parenting cases, you're talking about cases for parents that are not...
Children that are born out of wedlock.
Oh, okay.
Establishment cases.
Okay.
Establishing fathers as fathers.
Oh, okay.
So that children have the opportunity early on to get to know who both parents are instead of just one. Because we have identified that establishing parentage and getting involved fathers and having two parents involved actually reduces delinquency over time. So we have the parentage division, like I said, that last year we had about 6,000 kids that had establishment orders on them and support set and parenting arrangements made. So that's about a third of our court business. And then in addition to that, we have neglect dependency cases where children have either been subjected to neglect or abuse and their parents have been charged with that on the civil side. So they come in front of us so that we can see what kind of services the family may need in order to protect the children in the future. And then we have the delinquency. And each one of the divisions serves about 1/3 of our total caseload down here.
Oh my word. I never would have thought that. Because I guess I'm one of those like the rest that thought the last third that you talked about, the delinquency, was all of it.
Exactly.
But let's talk about the parenting more so.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to that, because that's interesting to me, because I had no idea you did that.
Right.
That sounds like something that the state would be doing.
Right. And you know, you're exactly right. The state is involved in those cases. When I started down here as a magistrate before my appointment as judge, I started on the parentage dockets. Okay. And those dockets generally start with child support services. We have a local child support servicing agency here in Nashville that will file petitions on behalf of moms and dads to establish parentage, set support, and establish parenting rights. Because what we have found is if we can get dads involved with more than just weekend visitation, but even, you know, more often than just every other weekend, the more involved that both parents are, usually the better the scenario for the family is. So it starts with the state filing a petition, or an individual can file a petition. So say you had a child or a family member that had a child born out of wedlock, or I did, then that person could come down here and file a petition to have parentage established. And like I said, that's how it starts, by petition. And then it gets before a magistrate. Usually there's DNA testing, if they want DNA testing. And that DNA testing confirms that they're the father. And then we go from there in terms of deciding how actively involved in the life of the child the father's going to be, and divide up custody and visitation rights. And
oh my gosh, I just didn't realize that you would have so much detailed work going on in establishing parental rights.
And we have 3 magistrates that stay busy 5 days a week
doing all
just on parentage and support cases. We have a federal 4D grant that helps us in terms of funding those particular dockets. But the reason that's so critical, Lavinia, is because that's our first contact with the family after a child's born a lot of times. So that's our first opportunity to find out what does this family need, so that we can keep them from coming back down here on a neglect abuse charge or a child on a delinquency charge. If we can get involved in the family early on and say, what are y'all struggling with right now? What can we help you with? What can we refer you to in terms of resources to help you? Because oftentimes what we see is a case will start in the parentage division. Stress will come to the family in a lot of different ways. They don't know what resources to access. And oftentimes the child ends up being a neglected or abused child, which ends up going before one of the magistrates upstairs. I have 7 appointed magistrates that assist me. So 8 judicial officers full-time working on parentage and child support, dependency, neglect, and abuse, and delinquency. And a lot of kids that end up on our delinquent dockets have also been subject of neglect, dependency, and abuse.
Oh, my.
So, you know, there's a whole lot more to it than a kid just going out and committing an offense.
Just didn't know you did all of that.
Right.
That is
busy work.
That is. So do you have counselors or what is the persons who go out and
probation officers?
Yes.
We have 107 employees. And we also run a contracted detention facility here. Of the 107 employees we have, and I'm very proud of all of our employees, they've done so well with the transition from judge to me, and they all do wonderful in their jobs, but of the 30 supervised probation officers, I believe we have about 26 in the field. And a lot of people don't know, Lavinia, but we have like probation officers that have offices all over the city.
No, we didn't know that.
And see, I was appointed October the 16th, and because I was a magistrate for so long in my division, I had probation officers assigned to my division, but I hadn't had the opportunity to get out in the field and really get to know all of these employees. So I've spent a good bit of my time when I'm not on the bench, out in the community trying to meet all of these 107 employees and see where they're housed. They're housed in different housing developments, so different low-income housing facilities. We have probation officers housed actually in.
Oh, now that makes it so much easier for the parent and the children to get to. They have to come downtown, worry about parking.
Right. So we're, you know, in the probation department, kids that are on supervised probation, last year alone, we had approximately 24,600 and something face-to-face contacts between our 26 probation officers. In 1 year? Wow. 24,000 face-to-face. And in those face-to-face contacts, you know, and we have room searches in addition to that. I think we had 400 and something room searches done of
Now when you said room searches, you're talking about go to the home and search the home.
Right, of a kid that's on probation.
That's on probation.
Right.
To see are they back on
making sure they're compliant.
And things like that. Wow.
And in those room searches, we have found guns, we've found cocaine, we have found all kinds of contraband. And then what we typically will do, we have graduated sanctions, which basically means if you're on probation and you violate a term of probation, violations can range from curfew violations on up to having contraband. Then our probation officers have the discretion of implementing a graduated sanction instead of filing a violation and asking for state custody.
And what's a graduated?
A graduated sanction is a list of alternatives to state custody or to detention that the probation staff can use. Public service work could be a graduated sanction. Lowering the curfew could be a graduated sanction. They have a number of options so that they can intervene to prevent further court involvement in terms of a violation. We're constantly striving, Lavinia, to intervene early in order to prevent court action.
That's what I was going to say. You have that whole parental section is just it's a preventive.
It's the best known secret.
It sure is. My gosh, I just didn't know that was going on here, and so that's why I'm so glad we're doing this show that you're on today, so we can let the community know these kind of things that are available.
It's all about education.
Because a lot of parents who are a child is born out of wedlock, and then you have, you know, other parents, the guy or the female want to go and establish parental rights and to be able to take care of their children.
Right.
That's one, and know that this is where you come.
That's right. That's right. And when I was appointed by the Metro Council in October, one thing that I said I wanted to do was to educate the public on juvenile court, because I think oftentimes, like I said, it's just this misconceived, we are just about delinquency, when in reality, we don't get to intervene with families too often unless something is filed that brings them to the court. Mm-hmm. But a lot of youth are brought to the court that never appear before the court. Did you know that?
No, and I was going to say, why would that happen?
Well, we have situations to where, say, a youth has never been charged with anything before, okay, and they pick up loitering during school hours. Mm. We have an MSAC program, which is a Metro School Attendance Center program that actually our mayor started several years ago and asked us to take on. Great project that we're working on here, because now the police officers can take these youth directly to the Metro Student Attendance Center in order to see why they're out of school, how many days they've been missing, and work directly with the school system to try to avoid a truancy petition being filed. So it's an opportunity for us to intervene without court action. Mm. And we do that very frequently too. It's been a great project that we've had. So.
Oh, this is wonderful. We're going to talk about your other two, but I'm a big preventive kind of person.
Me too,
absolutely. In health and in their welfare, just period. Right. And so that parental section is just everything.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Well, now the other section you were talking about.
Dependency, neglect, and
yes.
abuse. Generally, those cases start by the Department of Children's Services, okay, getting a referral. They'll go out.
Is that Metro or state?
That's state.
State.
The
okay.
State Tennessee
okay.
Department of Children's Services.
Okay.
They'll get a referral that there's neglect or abuse. And then they have a certain time within which to respond to that referral. Now, the State Tennessee Department of Children's Services is totally separate from juvenile court.
Right.
But when they go out and investigate their referral, if they find that there is a petition that's warranted, that they need to bring it to the attention of the court, then they will their legal department will file a petition to get that family before the court. And then the court has the opportunity at that point to determine what's going on in the family. Is this a case to where the child can remain safely in the home and we just provide services through the Department of Children's Services? Or is this egregious enough to where the child needs to come out of the home and placed in state custody while the family works a permanency plan to see whether or not the family can successfully be reunited? Our goal, generally, is when it's safe to reunite families and children, whenever possible. But there are certain cases at times to where there's severe abuse involved or something like that to where it's not safe and we simply can't reunite. And those cases generally will result in the termination of the parent's rights and freedom for that child to be adopted. Yes. So you have everything from neglect to severe abuse on the neglect dependency abuse docket.
Wow. And gosh, and that's a part of that 24,000 that you saw came before you last year.
The 24,000 was actually face-to-face contacts for kids that have been placed on supervised probation, which is totally separate from the neglect dependency abuse petitions that are filed. And we have an intake division here that's responsible for doing a lot of the paperwork that brings those kids before the court. So that's a very, very busy division that we have to, all the divisions of the court stay busy. We don't have people twiddling their thumbs down here.
That's not a moment's break.
There's not.
I said, no wonder I saw them barely eating at their desk to take a lunch break.
That's true. That's true. But the good thing about our employees is we have a lot of very passionate employees. You wouldn't be in this business if you weren't.
That's true.
The pay certainly is not such that they're doing it for that reason. They're doing it because they have a passion for families and children.
That's true. And that last 1/3, I think we kind of touched on that.
Right, that's the delinquency.
The delinquency part.
We have parentage, we have neglect, dependency, abuse, and then we have delinquency. And then we also have other cases, Lavinia, like my role as the judge. I'm appointed by the council because she retired before her term was up.
Right, Judge Green.
Judge Green.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful role model for me, she was. But anyway, so I'm finishing that term. by being appointed. Okay. But I'm appointed to an elected position, basically. I'll be up for election. But my job is to hear all appeals from the magistrates, the 7 magistrates. Mm-hmm. So once the magistrate finishes hearing a case, it's appealed to me.
Oh, okay.
If there's an appeal filed. So I hear those appeals, and then I hear terminations of parental rights cases, which is basically if the child has lingered in foster care too long, and the parents have not done what they needed to do.
How long is too long?
Usually 14 out of the last 22 months.
Okay.
In other words, if the child's been in custody, to me, any length of time is too long, but the state law says that if a child is in state custody in foster care for so many months out of the last 22 months, I believe it's 14, then the state has to file a petition to terminate the parents' rights unless the court finds a compelling reason not to. So of those cases, I also hear the termination of parental rights cases. And I also hear cases involving transfers of delinquents to the adult system. So depending on the charge, if the state seeks transfer, then I have to determine whether or not there's probable cause to transfer those youth to the adult system.
Now, in transferring youth to an adult system, is it age or is it other factors?
It's a whole list of factors that we look at. We look at the record of the child.
So a child under 18 could be transferred to
the adult system.
Oh, okay.
We have transferred youth
depends
since I've been
on
here.
The case by case.
It depends on the offense. It depends on the record of the youth. It depends on whether or not we've exhausted efforts here in juvenile court. Because our goal here, a lot of people believe if a child commits an offense, they're charged with the offense. If they're found guilty, they go to jail or DCS custody and we're done.
Right.
So much more.
That is what everybody thinks.
That's the general. Right, because if you're not involved with juvenile court, there's no reason for you to really know all the intricacies of juvenile court. But that's not really how it happens. What happens is if a child is charged with a delinquent offense, the state will file, or someone will file a petition to get it before the court. If it's not one of those diverted cases or a case that goes to our MSAC program or somehow is not diverted and it becomes before the court, then the court will make a determination as to whether or not the child needs to just get public service or something along those lines, or whether or not the child needs to be placed on supervised probation with one of those probation officers that's in our community that's an employee of the court, or whether or not the child needs to be committed to the Tennessee Department of Children's Services. Our detention facility here houses 48 youth. Right now, we're running around 27 to 28. It's a temporary holding facility.
That's what I was going to say. They're only there a short period of time.
Until they have a detention hearing.
Oh, okay.
If it's a detainable charge, then when the child is brought in, they're detained and they're given a detention hearing within a certain amount of time. And then after the detention hearing, they're placed in a settlement docket to determine if the case can be resolved or needs to go to trial. Once it goes to trial, then the court determines whether or not, if the child is adjudicated guilty, whether or not the child goes on probation or is placed in state custody or the like. If the child's placed in state custody, a lot of folks think that we can say to DCS, put this child in this facility, and we can't. The department has the authority to make the decision about what level placement that child's put in. So, secured versus non-secured, right, DCS state, right. Now, once a child is placed in state custody, that child will come back before us within 60 days for a hearing. And the purpose of that hearing is for us to determine if it's an appropriate placement. So even though I can't say, put this child in a youth development center, which is a level 4 secure placement, I can say, if they come back in front of me and this child, say, was committed for an ag robbery, and they put this child in a group home, I can say, this is not an appropriate placement. And then if they don't move the child, they run the risk of losing funding for that child. So we do have some discretion to say it's appropriate or it's not appropriate.
Okay.
And then when that youth comes in front of me, the whole purpose of that hearing is to have a permanency hearing to determine what conditions led this child to having to come out of the home. And those were some of my favorite hearings. Because the child doesn't have any charges hanging over their head. And I can look at that child and say, okay, let's just talk here.
Oh, that's good.
What led you here? What can we do to help the family while you're in state custody? Okay. And big breakthrough with some kids. Some kids will say, you know, gangs in the neighborhood. You know, those kinds of things. So that gives us the true opportunity to make a difference in the life of kids.
That's good. Oh, that is wonderful. My gosh, all of these things you do. How long you been here?
I've been here 10 years, and I love it.
And in this capacity as judge?
Since October 16th.
Oh, not
I was a magistrate before that.
Oh, my gosh. Since October.
Yes, yes. And see, the other distinction, and this is why I've had a true appreciation for Judge Green, Lavinia, because as a magistrate, you are nonstop busy all the time.
Yes.
But Judge Green always said, you all just do your jobs as judiciary, and I'll handle my job. And her job is judicial. Right. But in addition to that, it's managing the 107 employees and a grant.
That's what I was going to ask you. With all of those employees and
the detention center.
And the detention center, the whole program.
So my poor magistrates, when I came on board, I said, I'm not quite as nice as Judge Green, because guess what? Y'all are going to help me here. But they've all been wonderful and very supportive and helpful. And I think
are 4 months, it sounds like you've been working in this a long time.
Thank you.
Gosh,
I appreciate
you've accomplished so much.
You're too nice.
It's the whole program is my gosh, the preventive, I can't keep going, I can't help but keep going back to the preventive part.
But that's what's so important.
That's my thing, is preventive, trying to prevent something from getting to where you have to go before the judge and do all these things. And that is the most, and the fact that you are out in the community, when you're not on the bench, you're out in the community finding out the needs and hearing and listening and meeting and people and stuff. That's different.
You know, we had over, if my memory serves me correct, because we just met last week, I think we had over 3,000 kids that were diverted from the system just on the services that we provide here.
See that?
And of course, we have collaboratives with the police department, the school system, and they work together with us. I can't say enough about all of our collaboratives to try to get in the school systems and find out what's going on.
That's wonderful. Well, now tell us one thing about you, Judge Crawford. Are you from Nashville? Where are you from?
I'm from Nashville.
A native, no doubt.
I am. I grew up in Franklin, Tennessee.
They said, well, I'm a native too. They said we're around.
That's right. That's right. I have been married. I think we talked about this beforehand. I've been married for 27, almost 28 years.
Okay.
Husband Jay Crawford, 2 daughters, Taylor Crawford age 20 and Jenny Crawford age 13.
And see, mother, wife, judge,
but let me tell you,
community activist.
My daughters are total opposites. Oh. And that has been a true blessing for me, because they're totally opposite. So I've been able to bring that to the bench in terms of saying, okay, so this child acts this way, this child acts. And,
that's good.
And, you know, bringing that personal experience. And I'm also an active member of Christ Church Nashville.
Very good.
Which I have to tell you about Christ Church Nashville, because they have been an integral part of where I am today and who I am today.
That's wonderful.
Great church.
Well, you have to rely on your faith.
I do.
Yes,
I do.
Yes. And making decisions and things.
Yes.
This is absolutely great. But isn't it, so you also, I know you have a juvenile court clerk?
Yes, David Smith.
Yeah, that works with.
Wonderful man. He's totally separate from the court. He's an elected official.
Oh, okay. So that's what I want to make sure people understand too. That part is separate. Well, what does?
It's separate, but it's very important in terms of us being able to work together, because he's the one that controls all of the files that are brought before the court.
Okay.
So anytime a file is opened, David Smith's office is responsible for the total management of that file, staffing the courtrooms with clerks that record all the proceedings.
Oh, okay.
So we work hand in hand.
Well, that's good that you explain them. That's what we need to know. What's the difference in that office?
Right.
So they are handling all of the paperwork.
All the paperwork, all the recording. They're an integral part of us being able to do our job, and he makes it really easy. because he's a wonderful clerk.
That's good.
He's a wonderful clerk.
To have all the parts working together.
Yes, yes. We're definitely a team. Definitely a team. And
well, that
awesome.
is good. And it's good to know that, that our city juvenile system is all intact, and you're doing such wonderful good things here.
And eager to see what the future holds, because I'm convinced that there's so much more that we can do out there.
That's nice.
And you're helping by letting us educate the public. Seriously, I really appreciate this opportunity.
It's my pleasure, because that's important to me, to let people know about things that are going on.
And not be scared of juvenile court.
Yeah,
there's nothing to be scared of here. We're all human. We all want to work together to try to provide for the families of this community and to keep the community safe.
That's right.
Safety has to be a factor.
At all times. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Shucks.
well, it is about up, and I know I have to do some other things, but you have to get back to the bench.
Right. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thanks a bunch, and thank you for watching Luvric and Company. And we'll see you at 9:30 on Saturday mornings, and every Saturday. And I just love being on this show with you.
Thank you very much. You do a great job.
See you next time.